bronche, that's how we say brunch.
Here's to the ladies who stay basic with their lunch.
You want that bochinche?
Paquete con pinche, you hear what they said?
Not too busy, glasses clinking.
Aquí en esta mesa se respeta como ñón.
Si la copa está llena, yo te doy la bendición.
So what if we get ratchet?
We from the Bronx.
That's it.
Don't get it twisted.
We be going to Manhattan. Be a queen.
Be a boss.
Ladies who brunch and pop it off.
Hey, we pop and pop it off. We pop.
All right. The episode's about to start.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ladies Who Bronche. I am Julissa.
What's good, everybody? This is Skittles.
And this week, I am so excited to share this beautiful, beautiful artist. She's not only a playwright, but she is a visionary for her community. She works really hard to make sure that the connections that we make are strong, stable, and safe. She continuously builds safe spaces for people, and I admire her so much. And she keeps me on my toes, and she keeps me motivated every time I try to hide from the fact that I'm a playwright or a theater artist. And she always yanks me back in a little bit with love, like, oh, you don't have to, but you don't have to, but. And I always appreciate that she has so much dedication, not just to me, but to so many other Latinx artists in the theater world. Guadalis, who the fuck are you?
Hey! Thank you for that, Julissa. I'm over here like, espérate.
No, you gotta do more of that, affirming our people. You gotta say stuff like that.
Come on.
Okay, not just in special occasions. Like you gotta, you know.
You're right. Feed, like that's the thing about feeding into each other, right? How we feed into each other. But yeah, no, ¿qué le voy a agregar yo a eso? No? I have nothing else to say. Yeah, no, I'm a playwright. I'm an activist, an advocate, not an activist. And I'm a performer. And you know, I like to fuck around when I'm not being serious about stuff.
Yes. Because I'm the first thing that jumped out was the advocate, not an activist. Can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'm not like boots on the ground and like really dedicating myself in the ways that activists do. So it's just weird. Like people have been starting to like tag on activists to my name, and I'm like, no. I know activists that have literally made, you know, this work their lives. And it just, for me, this isn't anything that I'm putting on anyone, but just for me personally, like it would feel facetious for me to say, yeah, I'm an activist when I know people that have transformed their lives in the ways to be, you know, actual activists. Like, you know, activism is serious work and it impacts people. So to take on that name for me wouldn't feel accurate because I'm not like living that life. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I love that you say that because a lot of times, like people do that with me sometimes too, where they're like, oh, she's an activist. And I always use the word advocate because I'm like, no, I'm just using my voice to help. But there's a lot more than just a voice, right? That needs help. Like activists speaking out. Like actually, it's almost like activists seldom are speaking out. They're in the weeds, they're in the ground, and they're doing the work. So they're the ones you see, you know what I mean? And then the advocates, I feel sometimes, are the people who are like, you know, amplifying, but aren't necessarily on the ground. So I think it's an important distinction because as we move forward in this country right now, I feel like the difference is important because there's a level of support that needs to be given to the activist, right? And I think people need to understand what it means to advocate for people, and that the idea of advocacy isn't now tied to like an identity trait, like, oh, I happen to be an advocate. It's like, no, everybody advocates. It's about understanding how we're going to use our power collectively to do so for things that help us all rather than just self-advocacy. So, I don't know. I just think it's great that you made that distinction.
Yeah.
You say it. I was like, yes, somebody else.
Yes.
Too, right?
I had never heard anybody say that. So that's why I was like, oh, like, pause.
Well, you know, it makes me think of like Tarana Burke and the whole Me Too movement, where it's like all of a sudden, like she literally had dedicated her life to this work. And she all of a sudden became like, you know, not the most visible person. Like the ways in which activists should actually be leading movements and should be the you know, the voices of reason that we listen to. And again, it's not, because I think sometimes people get discouraged when you hear that, and it's not to discourage folks. I think it's for me especially, it's to be clear on who's leading movements. And I think that's very much a thing of activists leading movements and advocates playing, you know, co-conspirators and supporters and contributing their voices, their money, and all the, you know, your whatever you have access to, you're contributing that to this movement. But at the end of the day, it's the activists that are leading, the people that are, you know, actually forming organizations and like every day on the ground doing the work. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I feel like, especially with the Me Too movement, like it was necessary and it's powerful, and a lot of things, great things came out of that. But I also feel like, hadn't it been for Black women saying, "Wait a minute, hold up, y'all are not Barry, Tarana Burke, who came up with the moniker," you know what I'm saying, and who has been doing this work for a lot longer than a lot of folks have been, you know, working in the industry or whatever. So, you know, there's to me, it's about visibility and who's leading and who we're watching. And also with like everything going on now with Ice Cube, it's like, sir.
50 Cent. I don't know if you guys heard about
50 Cent. There's a picture of both of them with the Trump hats.
But that's a Photoshop picture.
Okay.
But but the point is not that it's Photoshop. The point is that now they can utilize your image and you to seemingly be of their support.
Right.
And that's just dumb because y'all niggas ain't getting paid for that. So,
yeah.
Like, to me, at the end of the day, damn it, y'all don't even get paid for that. Y'all look stupid. Like, and not that anyone should do it for money, but God, at least, you know, 50 is really out here, you know, trying to get, you know, getting rich and not die trying. Like, he might die trying. Like,
he might die trying.
Scared of some fucking taxes. Like, literally, that's what it's about. And I just think it just speaks to how wealth can transform people, and it's not about leaving the hood. It's about your interest, your self-interest change.
Yeah.
You know, you think, oh well, I'll funnel my funds into the community directly, so that's how I make up for the fact that I know they get fucked over, so that I don't get fucked over as a rich person. You know what I mean? And
wow.
You're finding out, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels like such a. I mean, I don't know. I'm riddled with anxiety sometimes when I write pieces that I'm like, I don't want to sell my community out. How is this gonna look?
Right.
You know, so I'm just like, so you're just gonna sit up here and like support a man that has vocally stated that his disdain, and not just that, like in New York City, like you ask any New Yorker, they know that man is racist. Yeah, Trump is racist. Like any New Yorker. You know what I'm saying? So I just, it's wild times, y'all.
It's wild times, but like, you know, just to cement the point around advocate versus activist, I think that what we saw with the Black Square thing that happened was a really big example of a moment. This dynamic of because now it's not just an advocate in the sense of like, oh, little old Julissa and Ladies Who Bronche posted it. It's like somebody who had a call to action that really moved numbers in the thousands. I'm not saying millions because I can't quote, I don't know if that's true, but definitely in the thousands, like just rushing to put up Black squares. And the advocate says it's a smart social media strategy to take on social media. And the activist says, no, dum-dum. Actually, what you're doing is you're clogging the line for us because actually the news doesn't cover us. So this is the outlet we use. And because everybody's hashtags now, all they're going to see are Black squares and not how we're trying to report things in real time, right? Didn't come from a bad place, right? Like, I don't believe that the people who put together the Black square thing and it got misconstrued, like different people had different interpretations of it. And like, it became messy, but it was a really, you know, like it could have potentially been a really dangerous situation if the anarchy, or not the anarchy in terms of like people like doing things wrong, but in the sense of like this explosion of emotions that was happening in the street and the police being so aggressive that they kind of really did need those outlets, and it could have gotten really, really messy. And who's to say it didn't? Who's to say there are certain moments and things that didn't get overlooked because of that, you know? But I think the more that we are open to having this conversation about the distinction between the two, and that we begin to self-identify the distinctions among our actions, the more we can get on the same page about how we want to be.
I think a lot of it is strategy. Like, I think that's the main, to me, that's the main difference, where if someone comes up to me, they're like, So what do you think are the things that the community needs to be implemented? And I'm like, that's not my area of expertise. It's like I don't have the strategies for that because it's not something that I'm like experienced in or have like a backup of actual working knowledge. And like even with the blackout thing, right? With the blackout squares, it's like there was a strategy behind that, but when you take that away from the hands of activists and everyone gets involved in a way that is more of to participate, it loses the strategy. And the same thing with like the Lebanon black and white pictures that all of a sudden everybody was posting. It's like it completely lost its original intention, which was to, you know, bring awareness to femicide in the Middle East. And it became this thing of like, you know, women,
a glamorous black and white picture.
A glamorous black and white picture. I mean, it was still like cute, right? It's like women uplifting women and you nominate other women, and that was cute. But when you go from femicide to it being about glamour shots, it's like,
yeah.
and the strategy failed.
I was gonna say, and it's just strategy failed, but no, not necessarily ill will intended. And I think that piece right there, like the internet is not a safe space for people to have that conversation. It's either people are very vocal about how dumb everyone is for falling for this internet fad shit, or you're saying, hey, let me fucking live. It's social media. I'm in a pandemic. Like, fuck. I'm just
trying to participate.
I was just following the instructions. You know, and I feel like there was I just remembered that day because I ended up participating and I didn't know. And then later I was like, oh, let me change my caption. Like, yeah, like let somebody try to read my caption and see, oops, actually it's about this. But I self-corrected, right? And there was a moment of that, but there was a lot of like, before that moment came, and if I was somebody else, or if I had to, that would like turn me off. And then, you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of our divide just comes from miscommunication of intention, you know what I mean? And I think we just need to have a little grace for ourselves so that we can get on the same page, so that we can fuck shit up together, you know?
Fuck shit up together,
yes.
So let's get into our brunche questions.
Yeah, so Guadalis, while we're fucking it up together, and you go out to brunche with your ladies, what is your favorite brunche bebida?
Ooh, I have like 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we ranking them most favorite to least favorite?
I think it depends on my mood.
Okay. Very Pisces. Are you a Pisces?
No,
Pisces?
I'm actually.
Okay.
Well,
it's a very Pisces thing to say. It depends on my mood.
Pero mira, I am a Virgo, but I think I'm a Pisces rising.
Okay.
Cancer moon. Wow. I forget which one. I'm a Virgo, Earth, right? Surrounded by water. So my rising and my moon are both water signs. I don't know what any of that means, but
does anyone really know though? No, I know there are mad people that know, but
but a lot of things are actually dictated by my mood. So if that's a Pisces thing, that would ring really true to whatever my either rising or I don't know. I need to check my co-star.
Right? That's the only reason I ever know. I'm like,
yo, co-star is it. Yes.
Co-star's also very savage every day, making me feel like
yo, sometimes they be coming at my neck for no reason.
Shit, fuck it.
No fucking reason. Like
there are days when co-stars like, so maybe show people who you really are today. Or it's really not all about you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're savage as hell.
Oh man.
But I need it. Sometimes I need it. So around. But I would say mimosa is always like a go-to because I feel like you have to be ridiculous to fuck up a mimosa.
Yeah.
I love Bellinis and I love Aperol Spritz.
Ooh.
What's in the last one? I don't know what's in the last one. I love a Bellini. I love a mimosa. you saw my excitement. Like I was like, yes. What?
If you haven't had an Aperol Spritz, please have an Aperol Spritz. It's basically like it's like soda water and then Aperol. Aperol is like a drink. It's very like orangey, citrusy. I like this.
Okay.
But it'll get you fucked up if you have enough of it.
Okay.
But those are my, and Aperol spritz, you can kind of have them whenever. They go great with seafood.
Ooh.
Yes, but I can have me a good Aperol spritz anytime.
Yes.
And he was like, let me get an Aperol spritz.
Well, when you're out to brunch and you're having your Aperol spritz, what's your go-to brunch plate?
I do love my mango, so it depends on the
Yes.
spot that we're at. There is a really dope spot by me on Dykeman. It's called Pop and Pour, and they have an elevated version of the tres golpe.
Oh.
Dominican owned, so they can fuck around with shit like that. I'm cool with it. If it wasn't like, what the fuck is this? But it's like they make the mango like real cute, and they put on top like the egg, nicely decorated, and it's like, you know, it's like a circle. It's a small circle that they've like built up and packed, and then they put the onions on top, and on the side, real nicely decorated queso, you know, frito, and then the salami on it. Like it's real nice. Like it's a pretty dish.
Yes,
it's really pretty. And they call it, I think it's like the tres golpe Benedict or something like that, because the egg is actually more Benedict than it is like.
And it is right.
Oh.
It's really good. Either that, or I was raised in Chicago, born and raised in Chicago, so I grew up around a lot of Mexican food. Some chilaquiles do me right all the time.
Yes.
I love some chilaquiles.
So, since you're from Chicago, and I was like waiting for a moment to be like, but hold on. But you ain't from New York.
You ain't from New York.
You're from another city, which I remember. I thought for a really long time you were from the Heights for some. Like nobody told me you were from the Heights. I definitely was just like, oh, Dominican, and I put you in.
Everybody, Julissa, everybody. They're like, I'm from New York. No, I'm from Chicago. Okay, I can still fuck with that.
I guess something about the Chicago swag is reminiscent of the New York swag, because the swag you carry doesn't feel different. Like I feel like sometimes I could tell. But anyway, you're from Chicago, so I would love to know, what was it like to go out to eat when you were growing up as a kid?
So I will say, like, my parents weren't really big on going out. My dad is like your typical Dominican, hay comida en la casa. Waste money on food, you know. And my mom, like, she's very picky about where she eats. Like, she's very much like, yo no sé quién cocinó esto, yo no sé cómo ellos son en la cocina. Like, my mom is very, she's not a germaphobe, but she's very well aware of germs and viruses and things. So she's always been very picky, and she, you know, she looks at the cutlery, and if she sees like, you know, fingerprints on the cup, that cup is going back. She needs to, you know what I'm saying? Which is like, we should, right? That's food that you're about to eat. You should have some level of like pickiness, right? So I didn't grow up going out to eat with my parents. I went out to eat a lot with like my aunts, my uncles. When I was younger in grade school, I would do oratory competitions, where I would like memorize a poem or a speech, and then I would like perform it. And I always won like my district. And the school would get a VCR, and I would get McDonald's dollars, like the McDonald's bags.
Oh my God.
You know, after I would win those little booklets, I would go to my family. I'd be like, okay.
Yo.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yo, I remember those booklets too. Like those came in clutch.
Oh my God, the booklet. Yeah.
But like, I felt like I was rich.
You were balling.
Listen, I was like 10, 11. I would be like, it's on me.
That's so fucking beautiful. I like, truly. That is so beautiful. And it reminds me of also Wendy's used to sell the Frosty, the little booklet for 79 cents. And then they used to have one too. It was really good. Oh. So what is your favorite bochincha topic to discuss over a meal?
Honestly, I just love to bochinche. That I don't think I have like a particular, I don't like bochinche in the sense of like gossiping and like destroying someone's life, or it being like all over, you know, blogs and shit like that. Like, that's not what I'm into. I'm into like, you know, people I could trust, that I could, because I don't spill secrets. Like, that's never really been my MO. But if I'm with like people that I trust, that I know are like hardcore vaults, like I am, like you're a vault, like that's just not gonna open easy. I could talk about anything. Like, you know, I love the saucy shit. Like she did what to who and he said what what, like, you know what I'm saying? I do love me some celebrity gossip. Like that, I don't mind talking about that because that's, you know, it's out there anyway.
Yes, and now we're going into the Cheers to the Ladies Who section where we shout out dope people doing dope shit. And ladies and gentlemen, this week we are cheersing to freeing the stoners. I, for those of y'all who know me, I have a very close relationship with my mother. It's a different type of relationship. I would say that I'm a mother's boy probably, just because like we have a very different type of relationship. We become very good friends too while I've been growing up or whatever. But the one part of my life that I have kept away from this woman is the fact that I like to indulge in marijuana. And
I didn't know you
bitch. And so this week she finally found out. And it was a very awkward moment. I knew it was a moment that was coming because I've been reckless. But it is just
quarantine.
It is. What happened?
Like you've been reckless during the quarantine, or is
in the sense of like with quarantine, obviously my intake has increased, and reckless in the sense of like smoking before I go to see her. You know, like knowing damn well that like she might smell it or see it in my eyes or whatever. But you know, we was here, whatever. Gerard was staying with me because we had just came back from LA, and he was quarantining with me so that we could get COVID tested before he goes back home to his parents because he lives with his parents. And she was coming over because she was going to Puerto Rico for a month, and she wanted to drop off her keys. So before she got here, I knew that she was coming here. Before she got here, I had like smoked, but I wasn't like smoking, you know, whatever. And she gets here, and me and Gerard go downstairs. Gerard had been sleeping, so he looked high. Like he had his eyes were red, like his eyes were low, whatever. We started talking to her, and she just flat out was like, "Y'all look high." And me and Gerard just completely disregarded the comment and continued the conversation. I forgot what we were talking about, but we just like completely disregarded the conversation. But then also Gerard's doing these stupid little like high things, like offering my mom clementines like while we were talking and shit like that.
He's always offering somebody
yo, he's always offering people shit. Like
then, does that though? That's like normal, but I guess like random shit is like, you high?
Because it was the way in which he was doing it too, because he was like mouthing it instead of saying it and like going like,
yes.
Like, bitch, like talk. We here, we talking. Whatever. Anyway, so she said that we continue talking, and all of a sudden I get to the point where I go to give her a hug, and her head, my mom's short, so her head is like right on my chest. And I hug her. She goes, "You smoking? Your shirt smells smoky. Are you smoking cigarettes?" Like literally, boom, 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 and three things. And I literally was like, I knew she was gonna find out. I just didn't know she was gonna find out like this. And I looked at Gerard, and he goes, "You smoke?" I was like, "Gerard."
Ooh, that post came quick.
He was like, "You smoke?" And I was like, "Gerard." And then I turn to my mother and I say, "We do not smoke cigarettes in this house. We indulge in marijuana." And she was like, "I knew it." Because cut to like a week before when 2 weeks before when Jessica was here, there was a point where she had came and we had been smoking, and my mood like shifted between when I spoke to her before she got to the house and when she was at the house. So she had some type of suspicion, and she had been asking me questions like about the difference between THC and CBD and so I knew that she had some type of inkling, but I did not know that that was going to be the moment that it came out. And it came out, And we laughed it off. She was like, you're a grown-ass man, so I can't tell you not to do it. But if you try other drugs, I'm gonna have to shoot you. And then I was just on my like, touche. And, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's out in the open. This was the one aspect of my life. You know, like, I feel like now I could just be.
I feel like you came out again.
I came out again. That's what I was thinking too. It was like coming out again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, I didn't really have a coming out story because my mom just flat out, long story short, it was when I was still living with her, and I had an old ass empty container that had weed in it. It just had the stem because I told myself, oh, I was gonna collect stem because I was trying to make weed tea. And so she had been going through my jeans and she found it and she was like, Julissa, like, how am I supposed to explain this to your family? This is such a disappointment. Your aunt would die. I'm not even gonna tell her because it would break her heart. And she has heart issues. I can't even tell her. Why are you doing this? I've failed as a mother. Like literally, like it was like this whole thing. And like, she didn't even hit me. I think my fear has always been like, if my mom found out, she's gonna beat my ass. But she didn't even hit me. She was just like, it was literally like this big dramatic moment. She's like, oh my God, your father would be so, I'm not even gonna talk. I'm not even gonna tell him because it's embarrassing and da-da-da. And it was this whole thing. And I was just, and she won. I felt like a piece of shit. Like I was like, wow, I've literally been a disgrace to my name. I'm a disgrace to the name. But I didn't stop smoking. So I, you know what I mean? I was just kind of like, I'm going to accept I'm the disgrace. And the reality is I don't think I'm a disgrace, but like just this idea of understanding that is just her relationship with drugs and how she does not like drugs is her relationship with drugs. And so I respect that. I'm not going to try to convert her to anything. If she has no interest in drugs, that's it. That's it. You know, but I don't smoke in her house. Like I would never like disrespect her.
That was another thing my mother said. She was like, just don't do it in my house. I was like, Mom, I'm really gonna go all the way up to Nourish House to smoke up a joint.
Right. Like you know, I'm also, and by the way, I'm not the only child that does it. You know what I mean? I'm over it.
Who did you throw?
They know.
Damn, there's 4 other siblings. This one of y'all.
They know who they are, and I don't care. You know, I'm speaking. I'm so, you know, I just think it's interesting. But for real, I think that part of my willingness to say it out loud comes from a place of wanting to become more of an advocate around weed and weed and justice around people who've been incarcerated for
absolutely
crimes related to weed. And also a new avenue that I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling this vibe of like weed feminism. And I'm just like, yeah, there's this way in which the relationship I have with weed feels very unique for different reasons that are tied to my feminism. Even just the example that like I grew up in a household where that was the reaction to finding a stem. You know what I mean? Like, so I actually came across this brand called Buy Weed from Women. And they're just, you know, they have an IG platform. I encourage everyone to follow them. And they basically just are advocates around like elevating stories around women and their involvement with marijuana and marijuana companies, cannabis companies that are women run and led. And I think that in a space where like, listen, legalization is the wave, it's coming. People are making so much money off this shit and the wrong people are making the money. Wrong people are making the money. And so part of my agenda, I mean, like, obviously, I think people who are formerly incarcerated, I secretly believe that they should have first dibs on having jobs that are within them.
Yes.
My personal, if they want it, right? Like, not trying to pigeonhole them, but I think that they should be guaranteed spots. I think they should be put back in the seats of the expertise that they had before they got locked up. Like, let them go back into it. And if they didn't know much, then let them learn. Like, anyway, that's its own thing. But just thinking about the framework of women with weed was not a thing I thought about until I literally saw the like Instagram page. And I'm like, yes, women and weed, there's this very particular relationship, and it's something that's important to me. I joke around a lot with Skittles about it, but I'm like, yo, my relationship with weed is important to me for many reasons. In the same way that my Afro versus my Dominican blood is important to me. It carries some of that same weight. So Buy Weed from Women, it's a brand I totally recommend everybody check it out.
Is that the IG, Buy Weed from Women?
Yeah, Buy Weed from Women. They have this jacket that I bought, and I've been rocking it. In fact, I rocked it in my neighborhood, and I didn't realize it was like a school day, and like the kids were in school physically. So I literally was walking. I went halfway up a block, and I just saw a bunch of little children in front of a Mr. Softy truck, and I was like, "You're gonna turn around. You're not gonna walk past those kids with this jacket." So even though I'm an advocate, I'm still working through my insecurities. Around advocating.
No, respectful. Okay.
You know, yeah.
But also, I think there's something to be said about like just destigmatizing it completely, and maybe even not introducing it to kids, obviously, but like just taking away that, like, because we grew up in that DARE generation, you know, and we were taught that if you were going to smoke weed, you were going to then do cocaine, you were going to do crack, you were going to be a crackhead, you know, especially for us Latinos in the Bronx, you know, it's that gateway drug that you need to stay away from and you know, whatever. And I think that I know too many family members that were like ostracized too much, like throughout my entire childhood, because they were the ones that kind of fell into that hole, you know, and you looked at a different way in the family, you know, from family members. And I feel bad about that, you know, especially now that I indulge as much as I do.
I laughed at that, weed being a gateway drug to other drugs, because I'm like, I feel like alcohol is more that than weed. Like,
talk about it.
Real. But I think, you know, there's definitely the point of when like coming out to your parents. Like, I don't smoke weed just because my lungs are like, I've tried cigarettes before and my lungs, like, I literally sounded like a 90-year-old smoker after I felt like, you know, like I was walking around like this. So I was like, not for me. But it's more the thing of like, how do you really become independent from your parents' way of thinking? You know what I'm saying? And like really stepping in whatever your truth is as an adult and as a human being, and being able to like, you know, make choices that are right for you, that may not have been right for your parents, but are right for you, right? And still be responsible about it, right? Yeah. Like, your coat, your jacket moment and not passing by the kids is like a perfect example of like, look, yes, but I'm still responsible, where I know I'm not going to walk around little kids with this, because that's not a conversation that I'm like trying to have with these children.
Right.
Yeah.
But with my mom, it's more the thing, like I grew up super religious, and even like no drinking and stuff like that. So we were having a conversation about like wine and stuff, and my mom literally looks at me. And Julissa, same. Like my mom, like I could worry about my mom beating my ass, but it really isn't that. It's more the disappointment.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the disappointment on an immigrant mom's face.
Yo.
That's just traumatic. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would rather you beat me with a chancleta 5 times over than to see that face of disappointment. Because it's like, I came to this country and sacrificed everything so that you can be drunk on the streets. Like a cualquiera, like a callejera, like a like, all the names, right? And so we were talking about wine, and my mom was like, Guadalis, oh baby.
I hate when they ask like that. Ask me what you know.
But it's like with this, like, tell me you don't. You drink? And I'm just like, and I didn't say yes or no. I was just like, hi, mommy, that's not the point.
Yo, I am the queen of doing that. That's how I deter my mom. I just don't answer the question. I am the queen politician. I don't confirm or deny a thing for her.
That is not the point. I make bigly decisions. I make smart choices. My ass turned here making up words and shit with my mom because I'm like trying to avoid the answer and like I don't want to answer that. I am big in New York. I make big league choices.
Yes, I 100%. I honestly fully know where you're coming from. I identify with that. I also grew up in a Christian household. Trust me. Like, even that this is out in the world and I'm saying this out loud, it is only because of the grace of God not giving my mom the desire to be on social media whatsoever, or my dad's. Like, they barely know how to use technology. But if they knew this conversation was going to be aired somewhere, you know the fucking ass whooping they would have.
I mean, I'm probably gonna get something from either family members, or I feel like my mom probably low-key has feelings, but like she literally went to Puerto Rico for like the day after.
He is on the beach.
I'm feeling
over Puerto Rico simmering on
So maybe like that was just like the stress relief. But
right. Yeah, there she go. I mean, you might as well do it now when she has time to be there and get over it again, you know.
Exactly.
Would she get over it though, Skittles? Like, is that something that she would be like, you know what?
That she will, because it's me.
I mean, yeah, I think
Yeah. My mom is
she's
someone who's like open-minded and stuff like that. It just needs to like, you know, be introduced.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I feel like my mom would just ramp up her Christian videos on my website.
Yeah. My mom would pray and all that for sure.
My mom, if she just wants to avoid it, she just won't ask about it. Like, she won't ask. Oh, can I have some?
All right. So now let's move on to our Tuta Loca Es, where we call out motherfuckers who are doing the most. Damn. I really be trying with JLo. I really do be trying with JLo because I fuck with JLo. I
love JLo.
Sidebar, unfortunately, because I did not have much representation on TV, and I never saw girls that looked like me on TV. When I finally had a girl who could at least say she was from the Bronx and she was Latina, I was like, close enough, right? Because I have Britney out here, I have Christina Aguilera, I have all these other girls, and she wasn't white. You know what I mean? And then I, at that age, didn't know I was Black, so I didn't know I can claim the Aaliyahs and all that stuff. I thought I couldn't because I wasn't technically Black. And so JLo became the thing that I had, right? And so, you know, when JLo tries, I really try to root for her too, because I think, you know, she is a girl from the Bronx. Her story is what it is. The homegirl cannot keep finding herself in these situations where she is bigging up the Black community in a way that she's including herself, but she actually does not participate in that community or claim that community. She doesn't even call herself Afro-Latina. She doesn't. And you know, it's so complicated because I've been in my evolution of talking about Afro-Latinidad. I realized that I was unconsciously building a bias against Afro-Latinas who don't look Afro-Latina. You know what I mean? Like, where I'm like, oh, I know your dad is Black or your mom is Black, but you're not Black. And so like, it would feel weird to see them claiming it if they were white leaning, but it's kind of like, damn, well, if their literal mother or father are Black, are they not Afro-Latino? Like, so I'm still really in that weird like space. But JLo to me is kind of like, sis, I feel like we even gave you chances to just claim it and go ahead and say that that's what you were, but you never did. And you were just always like, what? When she said the N-word and I forgot what song, it was just kind of like, those were the lyrics. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, the captain was a huge opportunity, and he was like, what? It's a huge opportunity. Like, you know what I mean? And now it's like, I'm always gonna be your negrita from the Bronx. Negrita.
Yeah. So I have like I'm like, because I know that there's gonna be, because I do love JLo for all the same reasons. Only I obviously identified it more because I was Puerto Rican and, you know, same neighborhoods, all that stuff. But like, and like, so I know that there's going to be the people that will try to defend it by saying that negra is like a term of endearment in Spanish, right? Like, my father used to call my mother negra, and my mom's not dark skinned, you know? And I never grew up thinking that when he said that, called her that, he was, you know, it was any type of racial like connotation to it. So I've known negra as like a term of endearment.
Right.
But when it is JLo, who has found herself in these situations several times. It's like, where is your team to tell you not to do this shit, girl? Like, this is several times, and you keep on doing this toxic ass shit where you're just not commenting on it. Like, you're doing it. People are having backlash, and then she doesn't say anything about it, and she just lets it exist, and that's a problem too.
Well, that's a PR move. It's like, you'll ask like, where are her people, but she's got like a ton of PR people behind her as well. And I feel like, because this was kind of also the thing with Gina Rodriguez, it's like not addressing certain things and kind of letting them die out, because it's like, oh, social media, people will forget after like 3 years. But I think the conversation with JLo, like, yes, right, there's the nuance of, it's a term of endearment.
Yeah.
Like, I have an uncle who would call his wife, who's like, white, negra.
Yeah.
She has dark hair, right? That's the thing. It's like, dark features. And I watching like soap operas, for example, would be very confused. Or even like the term tall, dark, and handsome. I would be thinking of a black man when someone would say, "Oh, he's tall, dark, and handsome," and then when I start talking about him, like, that's a white man. You know what I mean? He's got like dark hair and dark eyes, so it's like tall, dark, and handsome. Where it's like, it's not really talking about the skin; it's talking about
the features.
Yeah, but I think the issue with JLo and saying negrita from the Bronx is that she's never addressed herself, similar to what Julissa saying. It's like she's never addressed herself in that way before. Like, right now, the moment that we're in, to all of a sudden just throw that in there, with no context. And on top of that, like, when you talk about the visibility that, and I say Black Latinas, I don't use the term Afro-Latinas as much. I say Black Latinas because I'm being very specific about who I'm talking about. These are two light white Latinx artists, right? Doing a form of music that was created by Black people. And you look at Maluma's videos, where are the negras?
Because that was my other thing. It's like, and of all tracks to be on, you're on a Maluma track. Reinforcing the shit.
Exactly. And that's, and I think that's, while I think most Latinx folk understood what she was saying, even me in understanding what she was saying, I'm like, that's still out of context, because it's not a term that we've ever heard you say about and even more so now with everything that's happening politically, and then it also makes me think of like her All Lives Matter post with Lin-Manuel on that song that they did together. Oh, what?
I didn't know that there was an All Lives Matter post. What?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So let me.
I know that they did a song together. Wasn't it for Puerto Rico?
Yeah, it was. No, it was after the Pulse shooting, the shooting at Pulse.
Pulse shooting, yes.
They did this song together, and they performed it on, I think it was Good Morning America. And JLo posted a video on her page, or not a video. She posted a picture of her and Lynn, and she wrote hashtag All Lives Matter, hashtag something else, and she caught the fury and she took it down. And it was the same thing of like not really
addressing it. And when we think about like really think about JLo, I'd be forgetting that JLo's old. JLo comes from our parents. She's like our parents' age. And that, think about their mentalities. And it's, I don't know if it's like, it shouldn't be expected, but like, and it doesn't justify it, but just to put that into the context of like, she's old.
Saying that. I really genuinely mean that, because you said that, I'm like, you know what, and you're right. Because I got older cousins that think like that. I got older. It's like, yeah, oh no, she's just from that school of thought, period.
But can I, I'm gonna say this, yes, but when you have people like her and a lot of these other like older artists that are constantly reinventing themselves, it's like you're reinventing yourself in a way that, if you're not also educating yourself on how these topics and these things are relevant, like you're just really trying to stay relevant for your celebrity and not because you're actually being an artist. Because that's a thing of like, what is an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how does an artist like execute their art? There's conversation behind it. You're calling to something.
Come on.
Maybe I'm putting too much on them when I say artistry, but I have heard JLo calling herself an artist, so it's like, okay, sis. So what is your
right? If you're gonna claim it,
you know what I'm saying? So it's definitely, I do agree with you. Like, she's older and comes from a different time, but one, this conversation with her is not new.
Yeah.
You know, you can either educate yourself or you can continue to you know, act in the vein of ignorance, which then it's like, well, that's just you being willful because you're refusing to educate yourself. And the other thing is, you know, staying relevant within the hip hop movement and the ways in which hip hop moves and adjusts and who becomes part of hip hop. Like, I think that it's really important to know what's going on. I mean, and especially right, like, I think that there's also a cognitive dissonance if you're not going to be aware of what's going on politically and how that's also affecting the music that we're seeing. It's like, what are you really contributing to this moment?
right?
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and here's my other thing. If you can educate yourself on non-binary and trans experience because your nephew or you're nibbling, you know
Nibbling.
what I'm saying? Like, apologies, not, you know, nibbling. Um, if you're able to educate yourself on that, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, and I will say, like, I was the one that had all of JLo's records,
Mm.
JLo's perfume. I had JLo sweaters. I had JLo tops, JLo outfits. Like, whenever she would pop out with something new, I was all over it. Like, to the point where people were asking me, like, ¿Qué pasa con JLo? Like, who's she marrying now? And it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, a fan, and I would follow her career because same thing. Like, you know, a Latina from the hood. You
Mm-hmm.
know, even though
That really wasn't what it was. It was the hood part. It wasn't just that she was a Latina. It was the hood part.
yes,
Yeah.
even though someone was like, she didn't really grow up in the hood. Like, I guess that.
Yeah, she's from Castle Hill. She went to prep school for I think middle school. So she didn't like have like a like she grew up in a townhouse. It wasn't like I mean it was still the Bronx in the
Yeah, I was
in
gonna say,
you
I
know
mean,
like
in the neighborhood now. To her
yeah.
credit, it actually isn't. It's a nice looking neighborhood.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's, yeah.
Not trying to give her extra points, but you know.
But she didn't have like she didn't have like the Cardi B
Yeah, no.
upbringing,
She
you know, like
have a Cardi B Bronx experience.
yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, you know, being a Latina from, you know, from the hood or from a community that is not like your typical, you know, well off or whatever. And so I gravitated towards that, and just also being able to like fit in, figuring out where I fit in as well, even though she didn't really physically represent me, except for the ass part. Even though there were many times where I was like, but I got cousins with bigger asses than that. I don't see why.
Mm-hmm. It was always like, but that's regular. Like, what do you? That's normal. That house is not big. Like,
That's, you know, that like you can literally put a Coke bottle.
I low key, not to interrupt, but I used to think that used to make me feel like, oh, that's also how I know I'm straight because I can't even see what's so sexy about her ass. Like I would literally be like, I guess it's I'm straight. Maybe it's because I'm straight. I just can't tell with a big ass.
Yeah.
Like I literally used to think that that's why I couldn't see it. I was like, because everybody else is drooling. I just don't see it.
Well,
and the way she's branded it, but now, like in the beginning of her career, she never like commented on it. But now she literally like has a moment in stage where the dance is clear and she does a big, you know, and she's talking about big booty, but you gotta, yeah. And that's another thing with her branding. Like she's branded herself the Bronx girl, but I mean, I obviously haven't done my research, but I can't really pinpoint the part of the Bronx that she's really like been funneling all this money into, you know, like giving it back to the community.
Yeah.
Because if I were JLo, that ass, give me JLo's career. Because if I were JLo, there would be a JLo dance studio on Castle Hill.
Right.
There would be a fucking School of the Arts.
Skittles.
You know, in the Bronx.
Skittles. Skittles. Like, you know, it's like, how are you, you know, it's again, it's like that, you're right. It's the thing of how are you really contributing to the community that you're constantly like uplifting And it's hard, but it's also kind of like, are you for the people or not? Which is a separate conversation, right?
Yeah, because some people would say, well, why does she have to? All she did was work to become an artist, and so she's an artist now. Why does she suddenly have to be a philanthropist and also be an artist at the same time? But as an artist, she's allowed to talk about where she comes from. That's not her exploiting them. That's her truth. And so why does she have to do that? This is not my opinion. I'm just saying that there are people who feel that. And I wonder, what are your thoughts to that? Like, you don't have to.
Well, for me, there's, again, I feel like we can also tie this conversation to, like, people like 50 Cent and Ice Cube, in the ways in which you're supposedly working for your community, but not really.
Right.
And not consulting with activists to really see what is actually needed, what are the strategies that are already in place and things like that. And you can argue, it's like, well, if you're gonna claim someplace, right, that is a form of exploitation, because you're also gaining street cred by claiming this place, especially as her being an artist that has worked, R&B, hip hop, or whichever genre. I feel like they all bleed at this point. But it does give you a certain amount of street cred, and that's the thing that, where things become commodities and things become what's the word, where they can become something that you can use for commerce to gain some kind of
yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Capital. Well, yes, and it's not, capital's not the word you're referring to, but it's like a capital. It's just,
yeah. And to be able to claim, I mean, that was part of her thing, on the 6th, like, that was her stamp to come out, like, I am this woman from the Bronx, and that's my community. And I think she does have an understanding of how important it is to have the support from your community. And that is where I pause with what you're saying, Skittles, because it's like, knowing how much the community has supported her, right? Regardless of all the fuck shit, regardless of this and that. What are you really tangibly contributing back to your community for that support? And it's, not that it should be transactional, but there's a certain level of responsibility when you think of how we function under capitalism. It's like, okay, you're going to function willingly under this system that in many ways is oppressive, but how are you using that to not just your advantage, but also to your community's advantage? You know what I'm saying? And you can ask that about really any celebrity. You can also wonder the case, and like,
yeah,
Barbados, right?
Yes, what has Rihanna done for Barbados?
A lot, though.
You saying that made me think of this random ass fact. My friend is from the same town that Madonna's from, in Michigan, and apparently her brother's homeless in the town. Stuff like that, yeah. Isn't that a random ass, like?
Really random, yeah. I'm like,
but I'm thinking about, like, how you have all this fame and you're not even giving back to your own.
I mean, there's also
whatever. There's also levels of that.
Of family, right? Like, I don't know what her dynamic
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, Meghan Markle, I know that her and her dad don't fuck with each other because her dad is, all types of messy, and I wouldn't help someone out like that either.
That's real. That's real.
So, I'm not gonna comment because I feel like familial relationships get really sticky and weird, and who knows what her brother's mental state is, if he wants help or if he's like accepted her help or any of that. But I think when you look at it from like a larger scale of community and you claiming things, it's like, well, how are you actually, and I think of like the fundraisers for Puerto Rico when the hurricane hit and all that, and just the repercussions of that after. And it's a lot. Celebrity is a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I just need my girl to, check herself a little bit. Just like, I get the whole term of endearment thing, but to me, that term of endearment argument is the same argument as, but Goya has done so much for the community and they've given so much money and so much scholarship. You're going to cancel somebody who supported this community? Yeah, it feels like the same argument. It's like, yeah, it becomes about a bit more than the financial things and the flashy toys that they've given us. And it becomes about the righteousness and the value behind it and what that perpetuates if we allow it to slide. And people just don't want to. Some people are like, oh, fuck that. We're not going to see it in our lifetime. So why do we have to be the ones to care that much? It's silly. JLo, get your team together. I still love you. I'm tight at you though. You know, we'll see what your next thing is.
Ooh, this looks good.
Oh my God, this is delicious.
I definitely want to taste that.
So now we're going to move into our plate of the day. Afro-Latinidad on stage. So I have to say, like, for me, being in theater, it took way too long in my theatrical career for me to recognize that there were other Dominicans in theater. I thought that with outside of the people who I had entered MCC theater with, who there happened to be some Dominicans in there, outside of them, that we were very scarce and that I would have to do some really big digging to find them. And for a while questioned, how many Dominican playwrights are there? If I wanted to look at history, theater history, how far back could I actually go to try to surface Dominican theater if I wanted to? And I remember feeling like it needed to then be my job. Everything that I was going to do should have my Dominican identity in mind, because I should, because I am, and no one else has, right? And in that narrative, and really that came from lack of exposure, lack of, education and stuff around that. But I just, I remember entering theater and feeling like I was already taking on something that meant that I needed to be transformative and changing something, which already made it different than what I knew everybody else was going to do in the space. Which, it was good and also made it really intimidating for me at the same time. And so now that we are living in a time where we're having discussions around theater, the stories we're telling, who is telling these stories, how are we casting and keeping inclusivity in mind? It's been really interesting to reflect on, I guess for so long, even though I understood that there was a way in which I still subscribed to the system of theater and what it was telling me I needed to do. And I always thought of it as I have to follow their way first. And then when I get there, then I can fuck shit up. But now I feel like with the pandemic and Broadway being closed and just the Black Lives Matter movement altogether, there's room for theater and Black voices, and specifically even nuanced Black voices, and not just capturing the African-American story, but diving deeper into the diaspora, that maybe that changes a little bit. So I've been thinking about this a lot. And since you, Guadalis, are a Black theater artist, I, wanted to dive deeper into this conversation with you. And my first question that comes up is even just what was your first interaction with Black theater, and even specifically Afro-Latinx theater?
I'm trying to remember I saw Black theater in Chicago, and Court Theater in Chicago. They're on the South Side. They're at University of Chicago, but they do a lot of August Wilson revivals. So that was really my first interaction with Black theater, in the ways of which, in how I watch theater now. The theater company that I also work with a lot, I work with two companies in Chicago a lot, Aguijón Theater, which is a Spanish theater company, and Urban Theater Company. And Urban Theater, they produced one of Susan Laurie Park's plays, Fucking A. Pretty sure. I think it was Fucking A. Yeah. So those were really my first experiences with Black theater. With Afro-Latinx theater, I would honestly have to say it would just be me.
Yourself.
Myself.
That's certainly my answer,
Yeah. I mean, Chicago, it's honest. If I'm going to be honest, if I'm going to keep it 100, it's one of the reasons why I moved to New York,
So I'm going to assume that none of y'all saw Afro-Latinx. Plátanos and Collard Greens?
I always heard of it, but I never watched.
Yeah, I think for me, that was my first interaction, because I was part of this after school program for Latinos, trying to get Latinos into high school. And they but it was because I was a part of a program that was an effort to expose students to that. Plátanos and Collard Greens.
I didn't even know that was a play.
Yeah, they've been doing it, or they were doing it at like BMCC and stuff like that downtown in the city, but also
Vagina
like
Monologues. You see how Vagina Monologues took life and legs and like was everywhere? That was a show that sort of had legs that way, where people would do it, but because it was one of the few pieces to
yeah.
point that was representative in that way.
Yeah, that when I'm thinking of like my first interaction with Latinx theater, period, or Black theater, like that's the first thing that comes to mind. Aside from then, Lin-Manuel, you know, like In the Heights, and there are like I feel like whenever I like there were like maybe one or two more that I've seen in New York, but all have been on smaller scale, like small scale, small theater, low budget, you know. Um, so yeah, I mean, needless to say that like people are not putting money or were not putting money into uh, that part of the community when we were growing up.
Well, I mean, it's also the thing of like when you say Afro Latinx theater, is it the playwright that you mean, or is it the story, or because I mean, I saw In the Heights in Chicago, and I wouldn't necessarily call that an Afro.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's real. Uh, yeah.
And that's what I mean though, is kind of like and to another question that I'm sort of like that I wanted to ask a little later around what is enough, like what do we pass as actual, like what are we marking as, you know, Afro Latinx theater or Black theater, and what does that mean? For me, I feel like my first interaction with Black theater was when at LaGuardia High School we did I wasn't in it, but Ragtime had happened, and so the cast was like there was a lot of Black kids, and we had a lot of talented kids in our school. So for me, like experiencing that play was such a big, like it was both a moment of like the testimony of the talent that we had amongst the Black artists in our school, but then being like, wow, there are plays that have this many Black people on at once. Like it was just like that was actually the surprise to me, that there were so many Black people on that stage at once, and so that these numbers, it almost felt like church in certain moments, you know, and it felt like a ceremony. Like watching the play felt like a ceremony. And then I think that was the beginning of me realizing like, fuck, we are excellent at this thing that I've only been exposed to as a white thing. Like if people were to ask me outside of like, I did Raisin in the Sun as my monologue because Raisin in the Sun was maybe like the only Black play I knew with the scope of theater exposure I had at that point before entering LaGuardia. Like, you know what I mean? And so I was like, if it wasn't like that or Fences, then I really had no knowledge of it. So anyway, I'm rambling, but I say that to say, like, I think that even in the moment that I did have, even though it was a school production of something, what I recognized in the talent of the Black artists was that there was something special about how we occupied the space that the lack of Black theater and Black theater exposure had stolen from me. Like it stole it from my consciousness. So that's where that question really comes from for me. But then, like, you know, the reality is that we know that Black artists, Black theater artists have a different struggle. And some of those struggles are typical struggles that any up and coming theater artists have. But at least I'd like to hear from you and your experience, because like with working with artists like myself, you really are in the weeds of it, talking about advocacy versus activists. The way you move in the theater world almost feels like activism a little bit, in the sense that you know, you take emerging artists and you put people in places and opportunities. But I wonder, in your doing some of that work, what are some of the challenges that you see that are coming up for these artists that you're sort of like taking under your wing or helping elevate in some way?
That's a deep question, sis. I mean, honestly, like, and I'll say this because I was thinking about this the other day. It's a thing of, you know, theater will pick playwrights and nurture them.
Mm-hmm.
And mentorship is also another thing, and the ways in which mentorship is so instrumental to an artist's career. Like you can listen to, you know, really any playwright, and they'll tell you, well, my mentor this and that, and I had this mentor, you know, and how Paula Vogel and a lot of these other, you know, like older playwrights that are amazing and badass, but how they're mentors to, you know, younger playwrights. And I think that that's the biggest thing, which is one of the reasons why I'm the co-artistic director of the Latinx Playwright Circle. And we had our intensive mentorship program. And that was, we were really interested in the ways in which we can set up young playwrights with mentors, because that's so important. And so we have Migdalia Cruz, and we have J. Julian Christopher, Carmen Rivera, and Candido Tirado as our 4 mentors. And the other thing really is it's nurturing. It's like you read a play and you see this playwright's voice, and you're like, there is immense potential here. And so you pour into that playwright, whether it's financially, whether it's with opportunities, whether it's, giving them workshops, but you're pouring into this playwright because you believe in them. And I feel like a lot of times we don't have that because, and I'll say this, it's a racial bias. You'll read someone's play and you don't see the potential because you don't connect with it. A lot of times, whether it's their experience is different or whatever, but and also it might, I think if you watched 40-year-old version, Rada Blank really brings up a lot of important points of how we've had to write to be able to get the attention, right? It's poverty porn. It's Black and brown trauma. It's all these things that, yes, those stories are important, but a lot of times they're written for the white gaze. And so and I say that it's a multi-layered question because there's so many layers. So, one of the things that I really focus on is who are the playwrights whose work I'm super excited about, and how can I create avenues of opportunity for these playwrights to be able to be nurtured and to become better, right? Because experience makes you better, practice makes you better, being nurtured makes you better, having a mentor giving you advice, whether it's about business or about art, these are all things that make you better. And the ways in which theater has been designed pretty much under white supremacy, under a white supremacist lens,
yes,
it doesn't allow that space for Black and brown artists to be able to have that same type of support. There has been some change in the last 5-10 years, but there's also the thing of the token where one Black or brown playwright is picked, and that's the one that everybody is like, that's the voice. And it's like, if you can have 10 white plays about family dysfunction, you can have 10 Latinx plays about family dysfunction,
right?
Or 10 Black plays about family dysfunction, and because sometimes I'm like, so what's the difference between, what is it, Death of a Salesman and one of Chekhov's play, and you know what I'm saying? Like, it's all perspectives on family,
right?
For example, right? That's not all they write, but allowing for us to also be able to have 5 plays on the same topic but told differently,
right?
That's where we start really having, equity in theater.
Yeah.
And as a Black Latina, I'm also very interested in making space for other Black Latinx playwrights, because even within the Latinx theater canon, it's so exclusive.
Yeah. It's great, and I think that's why I think I admire the way you work so much, because it is a space creation rather than I'm going to stay within this systemic lens that tells me they're only going to pick one of us. So it better be me. I think it creates this environment. And I think it's taken some time, but for a while, I think some of the separation of these communities finding each other wasn't because we didn't want each other. It's because we were all in different little nooks where someone who was in the more white people, I don't know why I was looking for other language, where we had white people or institutions that were around us where we were the only ones that they saw. And so we had a very individualistic experience about who we are and what that meant to theater, because they didn't have an exposure and they didn't know the numbers behind how many people, you know, were actually existing within this realm. And so finally, because of social media and the evolution of how theater gets created, and because theater is not that big of a world at the end of the day when you really think about it, as we started to emerge, and I think that our generation had an emergence that perhaps didn't actually happen before us, right? Especially when I think about Black artists and, you know, Afro-Latinx even specifically, that we came around the same time. So as these people were like, oh, we found a new, and then it was all like, we were all like, there's more of us? Like in a way that was, but we naturally, because we understood and had been like shaken by these institutions and spaces in such a way that we were so traumatized that we were just, so, it was a breath of fresh air. It was the opposite of competition and feeling like, oh, who's that? It was like ooh, we can do something together, my God.
Yes.
People. And I think that that's also what the Latinx playwright circle is with for me a bit. I'm not going to put that on that person on you, but like for me, seeing that was just kind of like a fuck yes, because we don't need them.
Mm-hmm.
We just were hidden behind them because they were holding us behind them. We don't need them. So anyway, sorry, I got passionate there.
No, I love that, but it's you know, it's true. It's like, you know, I started doing theater in Chicago, and there aren't a lot of Dominicans in Chicago, so there really wasn't a reference point for me in that sense, right? Like, there's a lot of Latinx theater artists in Chicago, but not a lot like me get the visibility. So I was very much interested in figuring out where they all were. And I actually found out about Marco Antonio Rodriguez, he's not Afro-Latino, but he is Dominican. And I found out about him before moving here. I remember a friend of mine who was from New York and moved to Chicago. He was like, oh, do you know this playwright? And I was like, oh, no. And that was at the time when his play at Repertorio Español, Ashes of Light, had come out. And that was like the idea that there's another Dominican playwright, like, who's actually getting stuff produced and is featured in the New York Times. Like, to me, that was like, yes, like, we are out here doing this work and this is possible. It's just a matter of how do we connect with each other and really create the thing of like, we come in numbers, so you can't deny us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And moving here, I'm going to be honest, like, I legit thought my experience was going to be so much different than it was in Chicago. And it's been really frustrating to have to live in a neighborhood that is predominantly, you know, Dominican, that is predominantly one thing. And theater refuses to acknowledge, like, theater here in New York City refuses to acknowledge Dominicans in a way that to me is actually violent. Because when you think of all these theater artists, artistic directors, whoever, that gentrify the Heights, yes, and then go to theater, who are Dominicans? I don't know who these people are. They're the neighbors that you're fucking kicking out of the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? It's like violently removing people from their homes and then pretending like they don't exist when it comes to doing theater work, you know? And then when you look at the data of how Latinx folk, I think, are like almost 30% of the population in New York City, Dominicans being the, you know, the biggest population. And again, it's like, then why isn't that reflected on New York theater stages?
Right.
Where Latinx work is like, I think like less than 10%. Yeah. You know, so it's like, it's this cognitive dissonance of like, you're really not reflecting the reality of the city that you're living in. And so that's also a lot of what drives me as an artist and as an advocate, is this thing of like, you can't keep denying that we exist. I'm also a loudmouth. So it's like, I will fucking yell and will be up in your institutions yelling about how y'all need to like have more, you know, be more representative of the city that you're living in, because otherwise you are living in fallacy. You are existing in fallacy, you know? And I will say that a lot of that does come from watching Black theater artists that I know and I love be hella unapologetic about their work and their existence and their humanity. And I feel that it's so important for us to also live in that, being unapologetic about our humanity and live that truth as artists, right? Because that informs so much of the art that we end up ultimately doing.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Yes. These gems, 100%. So, you know, I feel like I mentioned a bit earlier that like Broadway in a way has been flipped on its head, especially with this pandemic. And I'm curious, what are some ways you think we can start to challenge Broadway to make space for more than just the Lin-Manuels and their Hamiltons?
You know, Broadway is its own beast because Broadway is money. And so I did take like a Broadway producers course. Like that's one of the things that I did.
Come on, Broadway producers.
And the workshop was being taught by, you know, Broadway producers. And when you see the money that goes into Broadway, it's ridiculous. Like the millions of dollars that are needed to put on a show, right? And so, you know, there's very much the thing of how do we create work? That's number one for me. It's like creating the work, right? Who are the composers? Who are the writers? Who are the lyricists, right? And that's just musicals, but even just plays. What are the plays that are, you know, can be put on Broadway, and who are the ones that are supporting it? You know, and I think of someone, for example, like John Leguizamo. I have my comments and feelings about John Leguizamo, but even someone like him who has the visibility that he does, it was a journey for him to get Latinx history for morons, which I prefer to call not the full Latinx history for morons.
Yeah, he forgot about us.
And
I went to see it, and I will say this, and I always say that it's not as a defense to him. I took my dad to see it, you know, and because I was like, well, the history, and I didn't know the play. I didn't think we were going to be excluded. Actually, I thought the opposite because, you know, we existed already, and we were being talked about already by that time. But the history I did learn, I did not know. I really didn't know. And I think the highlight for me was to see my father experiencing that, and I saw the validation in his face. Like I saw the like in a way that was deeper than what I was experiencing it. And then I realized, almost similarly to what Skittle said, and John is old too, so like my freedom fighter. That's not to say I excuse him for it, but I just mean I wasn't even waiting for him anyway. Like, you know, I'm like, I wasn't even waiting for you. But to see my dad experience that show, I was like, actually, fuck yes. And then at Hispanicize, when Skittles and I went, he won an award and he spoke. And ironically, in his speech, the focus of the change and when he was talking about the Latinx community was Afro-Latinos. So I was like, either somebody called him out and he listened, you know what I mean? Or he has a great marketing team. But he was talking about Afro-Latinos heavy in a way where I was sitting there like, shame, motherfucker, because this is a good speech and you right about what you're saying about it. Saying about us, you know what I mean? He was doing the whole like we have to stop doing this thing where we ignore Afro-Latinos, da da da. And in my head, I'm like, but you ignore us, but you saying it, so I'm gonna just keep my cool because you're saying it. You know what I mean? Like, and I much rather than cancel culture, I much rather say, if you're gonna say that, all right, now you said it, so let me hold you to your words. Let me usher you into what that needs to look like because you said it. I didn't even force you to do it. Right. So anyway, but you were saying John Leguizamo also had to struggle.
But even bringing that show to Broadway was a journey, and you know the fights to have to get it to that point. And I, you know, I'm still struggling with what does that look like on Broadway, because Broadway has more to do with the producers who are willing to front the money to put stories on there. And it's like, so how do we get moneyed Latinx folk and moneyed Latinx folk to invest in getting these shows? I mean, when you look at like Eclipse. Wait, what'd you say?
I said, Lynn. You got money, create the space,
you got money,
Lynn. You
um,
got that Disney money, Lynn.
Disney money.
Create the space, Lynn.
but you know, when you look at Eclipse, like that was 3 Black producers, 3 celebrity. Actually, I think it was more. It was a bunch of Black celebrities that were like, we're gonna put this story. But Lupita Nyong'o was also fighting for that story be on Broadway because I think it was like she came across it at Yale when she was in school. And same thing with like Fela Kuti when that was put out, that was Black celebrity money. You know, so it's like, how are Latinx celebrity money supporting this? You know, it's like on your feet. Who was producing that? Who was behind that? And that's the thing, right? Because and this is when art becomes so entrenched with capitalism. In the ways of like, does Broadway actually then serve us in the way that, you know, we want it to serve us? It really doesn't. Because if it takes millions of dollars that we just don't have to put up a show to be able to be nominated for a Tony Award, it's like, then what really is our true investment in our work, and how, what is it that we really care about at the end of the day? You know?
Which is crazy because I feel like if only these people with this money knew how much people would turn out for this work, how much the community, how much they would gain from it monetarily by just investing in it, because the community will support the art that's being produced.
Yes, but Hamilton wasn't really seen by many Black and brown folk until it was on the Disney Channel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Other conversation about Broadway is accessibility. It's
yes, and even education. Period. Like the schools that our kids are going to don't have music classes. Period. So they're not even considering going to become the composer or going to become the playwright or going to become even the dancer or the singer or the actor, because they don't have access to the education that would lead them down the path to go and make the community bigger.
Right. And then the responsibility is like, you wonder if it's like, okay, so then is that the playwright's responsibility to then really try to make it as accessible to audiences as much as possible? Like, I think of Slave Play, which is
I never watched it or read it, but I have to. I know.
I'm not putting that on you, sis.
I've been told I have to, and I was like, okay.
Well, someone else.
Well, it has 12 Tony nominations, right?
Yeah.
But what I thought was really dope that Jeremy O'Harris did was this thing of making the tickets as accessible as possible, creating Black theater night, you know, getting white patrons to sponsor motherfuckers. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, he was really like invested in making sure that Black people were going to see this play. And it's like, so then what are we doing? Like, we as Latinx, right? I'm not saying like we as Black, because, right? But like, what are we who are part of the Latinx community really doing to get our folk to see our work? Because I mean, I know for me, like, I write for the Dominican community. I don't write for the white gays.
Or like,
Right. Like, and you know, and I write for Black folk. Like, I write for my people. You know what I'm saying? That's who I want invested in my work, right? And if, you know, white folk are able to connect with it, great. Right. I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. Like, if I'm as a storyteller, people are going to connect with the story regardless, right? It's the same reason why we can read Greek mythology and fuck with it, because we get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just storyteller. But the specifics of the story and the nuance of the story, like, that's eso pa mi gente, you know? But knowing that, and a play gets to like Broadway, or it gets to like one of these big off-Broadway theaters, it's like, then what is my role as the playwright, as the creator of this work, to make sure that my community is coming to see this work, right? Like, it's so layered. Like, theater is so layered, and being a theater practitioner, a BIPOC practitioner of theater, is so layered because there's all these things. And it also depends on how much you give a fuck. If you don't give a fuck, then you're just writing your work and you want your shit to be produced, and then you go home and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's really your investment in writing for your community?
Yes. Oh, girl, what a gem. And I honestly to the same vein of that, and I'll close I'll close with this question. People keep saying theater is dead. And so what I am finding right now is both with the revolution of what's happening and on top of that, the added layer of Broadway having to figure itself out in a new way. And when I say Broadway, I also mean off Broadway, because to me, or as an Afro-Latinx, like as a Dominican, even I've just always found that the lane there felt just as difficult as Broadway. So I could be tight at Broadway, but I'm tight at off Broadway already. Or I could get mad at Broadway. They're not even letting me get to level 1. Like it's frustrating. So I have the same energy towards them. I say that to say that. But I just kind of feel like part of the struggle that they're having, and the only reason people are saying that theater is dead, is what they mean is that theater, as the huge monetization of theater that was happening for people, is dead, because that monetization had to do with seating placement and the way in which they were able to build exclusivity in a particular way. And then now it's the exclusivity also includes exclusivity of safety, and that is not something that you can class out too much, you know what I mean, without being like side-eyed, like, really, you're gonna like make people pay more to risk their life less? That's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. But if they did it, I wouldn't put it past them. I'm just gonna say that now, in case this dates itself, and then later we get an article from the New York Times about how they're selling fucking Broadway tickets in tiers of safety.
Oh my God.
But it's about the money. They can't make the money the same. I'm looking at Broadway and the particular streets, from whatever the fuck it starts to wherever the fuck it ends, not being the center of it anymore, as the biggest fucking gift that I got as a theater artist out of this pandemic. Because now, if it's about the artistry, now if it's just about creating you have to do theater on Zoom? No. If you're going to take it off Zoom, where's it going to go? It has to go back to the streets. And at that point now, like, it creates an opportunity where, like, yeah, theater in the Bronx, yeah, theater wherever the fuck, because we don't need to take the train to 42nd Street. Okay, it's nothing there for you anymore. So now I think for me, it's almost like I have for a very long time ago let go of this notion that I was gonna make my financial career out of being a playwright. That's why I do 10 million other things. Because my real heart in being an artist is about being able to say, yeah, I was part of the revolution where when Broadway closed, we were in the fucking Heights, or we were in fucking Parkchester by the little fountain, and we were doing theater, and it was for the people, and it's exactly what I yap about. And I feel like I have an opportunity to walk the walk behind the talk of how theater is bigger than what we allow it to be in the constraints of that structure. But it's easy for me to say, as somebody who's saying, I also don't think this is how I'm going to make my money. So I'm putting that out there, but I do feel like there's a huge opportunity. So to me, theater, the industry of the financials might be very weak right now, but the artistry is more alive than it's ever fucking been. So there's no way theater is going to die. Theater started in the streets. You know what I mean? So I'm like, we got to go back to basics, baby. Relax. You don't have the power right now until you do, right? Because Lord knows how they're going to figure it out. But I'm just curious about y'all's thoughts about that.
I will say a lot of theaters, specifically off-Broadway theaters, the money that they have, they don't make it from ticket sales. It's donations. Donations, it's grants, it's subscribers, like, ticket sales. But a great majority of these theaters, the money comes from wealthy people giving the money, from their board and all that. Mm-hmm. So theater can be reinvented. Like, it doesn't have to be in a space, absolutely, right? But it's like, it's the thing of how do you change a way of doing things that people will buy into and people will see the benefit of it. I don't think theater is dead. I do agree with you, Julissa. It's a matter of like taking it back to the streets and really seeing how there's the thing of something that has also been with me is we've been doing theater the same for the past how old is Shakespeare? You know what I'm saying? It's that, and it's very Greco-Roman, it's very British, right? But I'm also very much like, well, okay, cool. So how were my ancestors doing theater?
Mm-hmm.
Think of how our ancestors would come together in, for example, like with Tainos, when they would come together in the bohíos and, you know, in the bateis, and create music and tell stories, because that's how they kept their history alive. Right. That's a form of theater. You're doing that, you know, with the community. That's theater. Yeah. Or during rituals and ceremonies where where everyone is there watching these. That's theater. Yeah. You know, the performances. Hasta cuando se montan los santos, and you're doing. That's a theatrical.
That shit is theatrical.
Yeah, that's the theatrical thing of it, and I'm more interested in seeing in the ways in which we can really think outside of how we've been doing theater, in the ways that are reflective of our cultural differences and our experiences. You know, the things that I love about experimental theater and even like immersive theater, right, is because it's fucking different. It's not the usual shit that you go and you see you have 2 acts, you know, you go pee in the middle and then you come back and you sit down. You know what I'm saying? Like what are the different ways that we can do theater? And to me that's exciting, because it's like we're going to revolutionize and not even revolutionize, because that sounds real like, oh, you know, like just like super like, even to the basics. It's like, how can we let artists be artists? Right. How can we let artists use their complete imagination to tell this story that they want to tell? Right. You know, because that's also the other thing when you look at like how white supremacy works. It's forcing non-white folk to operate in the ways in which white folks operate. So it's like, I have to do theater how you do theater, but that's not how I tell stories. Right. Can I do it in my way? No, because this is how we do things. And it's like, can we allow for a different way of telling stories, a different way of doing theater? So I don't think it's dead. I also, you know, right now because of, you know, Black Lives Matter and the pandemic, I'm also seeing a lot of, you know, white folks moving away from being allies to becoming co-conspirators. And that to me is really exciting. You know, because it's like, how are you going to become involved in this movement in the ways that you haven't been involved? And how can we work together to really push forward what true equity looks like, especially in theater? In general, for our communities, our neighbors, and our family members. But as artists, what does that look like in theater? And I find that really exciting. I'm also really loving seeing young Black and brown kids like just really fucking shit up and like being creative. Like, yeah. I know people have issues with TikTok, but I'm like, these kids,
they're creative as fuck. Yeah. These kids are creative as fuck.
The babies shall lead.
Yeah.
I'm here for the TikTok kids. Like, I am.
Because some of it is really fucking creative. Like, and granted, like, there's that level of like, oh, well, they're taking audio and they're taking this and that from stuff that's already been creative, but they're really being transformative with it. Like,
sounds like hip hop.
I'm here for the kids. But I think overall, yeah, I'm just really interested to see how theater is going to transform. I am interested to see how our voices are going to really inject itself. I think because theater is, you know, down, like is one leg out right now, that even the use of technology and how that plays a role in theatrics is going to create more space for more theater makers. And excuse me, I'm excited to see it. I'm just excited to see what happens.
And the ability of that, like, there's so many folks who, you know, who are disabled that aren't able to make it, because let's be real, a lot of these theaters are not up to fucking ADA code. So it's like, yeah. And or, you know, the abuela and the tia that are like, theater's not for me because they're not used to seeing stories about them. Yeah. Right. So creating accessibility in a way where it's like anyone can have the ability to like tune in or to participate in you know, taking this in. And I think that was like the thing that was really smart about Hamilton. It's like everyone watched it.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't have a TV, obviously that's a different conversation, or you can't afford Disney. Pero you're fine.
I just wanted to admit that I haven't. I actually was listening to the soundtrack this week, and I was trying, and I just didn't have the attention span. I'm a visual person. I'm not just. I can listen to Broadway soundtrack after I've already made a connection with the piece, but if I haven't yet, sometimes it's hard, and it's hard when it's hip hop sounding like this, and I don't sound like that. So when I hear it, I'm like, okay.
Listen, I think that the Disney Plus way of doing it was extremely smart. I think as someone who saw it on Broadway and then saw it on Disney, I got it more on Disney because of the way it was shot. I just feel and also what played a factor in that was that I didn't have glasses when I saw it live, so it was just like a lot of blurry movement mixed with fast rapping that I was like, what? So the Disney did help me understand it more, but I'm an In the Heights girl all day because I just like it better, and I don't like Hamilton as much.
Not stand behind it because there is wickedness being claimed, and I didn't feel well represented, and that's literally it. I'm not even saying it's poorly written. I'm not saying that the songs ain't cute. I watched it and I remember feeling a surge of like, this isn't really it. This feels like Sesame Street, but I'm glad we up here. So I did have that moment of the like, I'm not mad at it, but come on, bro. But also maybe he wasn't allowed. And I think I just played into this. Well, he wouldn't have gotten away with it if it was what I wanted it to be. And I've still waited for the moment that he makes something that to me feels like is making it, and he's making a statement, and he's not afraid to be raw. Because it's not that he's dishonest, but it's like raw, like a rawness. Like if you ever
But I don't think he's raw. I just think he's waiting.
That's
what I'm saying.
That's what she's saying. Yeah. She's saying that rawness isn't there for her. Yeah. I
could be like, oh, I love this or that. I don't love Hamilton and I don't love In the Heights. I did feel represented because it was the first time I heard the word Dominican on a stage, and it was like it was shocking, and there's just something about that, you know what I mean? In the same way, people felt some type of way when they saw West Side Story, and maybe there was a level of representation, even though they were completely
Mexican music.
It's the weird, like we have nothing. So when we get something, sometimes it's hard to not get a little excited. It's how I felt watching the Super Bowl show with Shakira and
JLo and Shakira.
Get down, bitches, but you look good, but get down off that stage. Damn, you did it. And it's just like this like fucking like duality of like the pride because I knew what I meant, but also like really now is not the time for this one. But isn't not the time
ways in which we're made pawns.
I was like torn between the two. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm just saying I'm very interested to see how theater is going to transform. And I hope to see, I can't wait until everybody's talking about Guadalis's play and that Guadalis.
Yes.
Because I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna take that flag right behind me. I'm gonna be in the audience with the flag.
Yes.
You better. Can I say real talk? Like I've had conversations before. Like I don't know how I feel about these loud audiences. I love loud ass fucking audiences. Right now. It reminds me of my abuela yelling at the TV watching her telenovela. Like, I love it when audiences have a reaction watching your shit because it's like, what the fuck else am I writing this for?
Yes, come on.
Yes, I want to hear. Like, my first play in Chicago, like, we had audiences who were like, y lo va a tomar para atrás, like out loud. Like, they were like, oh. I love that. I love that. Like, please let me know that you are watching and enjoying
it.
Please have a human reaction to this human story.
I love it. Yes.
Yes. And when we do revolutionize theater, I'm going to speak into existence because I don't write plays, but I want to be in plays. So cast me.
Yes. Yes, kiddos. I've seen your videos.
Real.
Out here working.
Listen, I'm a really good best friend. That's my new tagline. I'm a really funny best friend.
You're also a very good lead.
Aw, thank you.
That's right. That's right.
I appreciate that.
Well, Guadalis, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such a joy. I hope you've had fun with us too. Let everybody know where we can find you, follow your work, any new projects that are coming up, any shout outs, anything.
Let's see. The Latinx Playwright Circle, I mean, we did our greater good. Congratulations, Jalise.
Yes, thank you.
Whoop, whoop.
I believe it's still up on Pregone's like social medias. But we also have 2 other readings to finish out our first season, which is wild. Our first season was the virtual one. And that's happening at the end of November and the beginning of December. We'll have Andres Osorio's play, The Hostel play, and Andrew Rincon's play, The Lonely, which are 2 really beautiful plays, and that'll finish out our season. I have no clue what's happening with Bees and Honey because I don't know what's going to happen to theater next year. So we'll see. I am on Instagram, Guadalis DC. It is private, but if you request me,
send her a little DM that Ladies Who Brunches sent you.
Yes. just say Ladies Who Brunches sent you. And Facebook, I'm on Facebook. I'm constantly yelling on Facebook, so you'll hear me. And when is this episode dropping?
This Sunday.
This Sunday? I'm like, I am producing a festival coming up, but it's in December, so I'm like, I don't know if I can talk about it yet.
But be on the lookout.
Well, be on the lookout.
Yes.
We'll reshare.
Stuff is coming. I just can't like say much, but just be on the lookout. That's for sure.
Let's.
Awesome. Skittles,
yes.
find us.
And y'all can find us at Ladies Who Brunch on Instagram, Ladies Brunch on Twitter, Ladies Who Brunch on YouTube, at Julissa on Instagram for Julissa, and at The Real Skittles with a Z for me. Ooh, bars, right?
I really appreciate y'all.
And we really appreciate you and everyone listening. Thanks for joining us today. And until next time, bronche.